Hey,
Hey, what's up? How are
how
you?
are you? Sorry it took me a couple minutes. I was trying to get my daughter situated.
Oh, no worries, no worries. You just have one kid?
I have two little girls. One's 11 and one's 8.
Oh, wow. So they probably require a lot of attention, I'm sure.
Yeah, especially
So,
right now during this time while I've been helping them, with homeschooling.
yeah, yeah. So
So
you've got your own schooling going on too, right?
I do. So the semester just ended, and so I'm grading papers, and then I'll be getting my students' grades turned in, and then I'm working on my dissertation right now.
Okay.
And so hopefully, as long as everything stays on schedule, because of COVID,
hmm
I should be graduating by December.
So, looking at your page, like I see there's a lot of letters behind, your name. So like, kind of tell us like what kind of degrees do you have? What do you like specialize in? That kind of
Okay,
thing.
sure, yeah. So my bachelor's degree is in psychology, and then I have my master's degree in mental health counseling, and I'm getting my PhD in counselor education.
hmm
And so that enables me to focus a little bit more on teaching and doing research. And I'm a licensed professional counselor and a mental health service provider, a nationally certified counselor, and then a clinically certified mental health counselor. And
So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to
I was just
interrupt
gonna
you.
say I specialize in addiction
Uh,
and,
I see.
working with mental health clients.
Sure, sure. So what moved you to like want to get involved in that kind of work? Because that's kind of work that like a lot of people wouldn't want to do, just
Yeah.
because it's so involved and it's so just convoluted, I guess you could say. That like what drove you to do that?
I knew that I always wanted to do something working with people. I'm
Mhm.
just a people person, and I also just have a lot of compassion for others. I'm a very empathetic person, and so I wanted to be able to help others and do something that mattered,
Yeah,
with my career.
yeah, yeah. Is that like when did you decide that that's what you wanted to do? Was it like early on since you were, younger, or was this kind of like a more recent endeavor?
I decided it when I was in my early 20s.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
because I've been in practice now for 15 years.
Okay. So after you get, this degree, this comes to a conclusion. Like, what are your like goals with that? Like, do you have like something that you like have your eyes set on, like where you want to work or like what you want to do? You're kind of already involved in that work, but is there like something else that you're kind of looking forward to? Because I know you're in Knoxville, right? You're
Yeah.
there for the education, but after that, then what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'll make a decision. I'm doing a little bit of private practice and then working at an agency that provides addiction treatment.
hmm
And then I do enjoy teaching, and so I'm considering possibly, making a move and becoming a full time professor at a university,
hmm
or I may decide just to do a mixture of things.
yeah,
Do a little bit of teaching, a little bit of supervision, a little bit of research, and a little bit of clinical work. So
sure,
yeah.
sure. That's such a tough area to go into. Like, do you find it like exhausting mentally because you're dealing with people that are, dealing with addiction, which is, I imagine, it's not an easy go.
Yeah. Um, the thing about it is because I've been doing it for so long, I've learned how to manage it
hmm
by censoring other things out of my life and then just by practicing really good self care.
hmm
By taking care of myself, working out and eating right and making sure that I get enough sleep. I also don't watch the news. That's something that I have chosen not to do just because there's so much like negativity and it's just reporting of disasters and just all the crises that are going on in the world. And so because I'm
Sure.
already getting so much of that on a daily basis interacting with my clients, I just choose not to watch it.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of good things on the news, right? It's always like negative. Everything's always negative because that's kind of what drives, media news in general. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So what do you think about like as far as the state of like mental health in this country, but also like just over in the world, like, do you think it's, let me put this in the right way. Do you think it's being dealt with appropriately, or like would you like to see like some changes? And if so, like what changes would you implement if you had that like omnipotent type of power, where you could
Yeah.
do that?
There have been, some progressive changes with it. I think that we're on the right track. I think that they still need to do a better job with providing, coverage for it when people need services. I
Mhm.
also still think that there's a lot of stigma surrounding it. Culturally, there's a lot of cultures that don't believe in counseling or believe in asking for help, with mental
Mhm.
health services. And then I think that there just needs to be more psychoeducation that's out there, especially with suicide. Just
Sure.
with the recent passing of, Luke Sando yesterday,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people don't realize, how bad depression is and how prevalent suicide is, not only in the bodybuilding community, but just in general.
Hmm.
Um, and just that whenever, somebody says something about, ending their life, or maybe if it was better off if I wasn't here, just things like that, that, people can become educated on how to help them,
Yeah.
so that something like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's a hard subject. I was on the police department at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, and
Mhm.
every time like it came down to like the school year with the finals and everything like that, and all that pressure on those kids, we've had a lot of suicides.
Mm.
Every year is a lot of suicides with kids just being overwhelmed, and I'm sure depressed from from the school year and all that everything going on, all the pressure on them, pressure by their parents, pressure they put on themselves to excel. So when you counsel someone, is there like a rubric that you kind of go by, or is it very individualized? Like, do you start off with like a certain basic like input, like, or do you just kind of, how would you do it? Let me ask you that. That'd be a more appropriate question.
Um, well, I think with everyone, you do an initial intake,
Hmm.
and you have to see, kind of the problems that they're presenting with, and then you are going to have like an individualized treatment plan with each client that you're working with, based on what they're presenting with. And so, that can vary because of, age or current circumstances, whatever's going on with them.
Have you, without obviously without any kind of like you know personal information, and you judge for yourself what you want to say, but well, do you have like anything that's just outstanding that like in your mind of like any cases that you've worked on or situations that you come across?
I think just being in addiction for so long, I just see the pattern that
Hmm.
occurs with it, because part of it is genetic,
Hmm.
and then part of it is environmental. And so, just something that really stands out to me is just the the passing down of it, like the
Yeah.
generational pattern. And so if there's any way that we can help by intervening, it's to kind of break that cycle. um, because a lot of people that suffer from addiction have, a lot of abuse past in their past, or they have trauma history. And so really just getting to the root of what's going on. And if they had a parent or grandparent that was also addicted, then, they didn't have certain needs met. They had abandonment, or they had some form of like emotional abuse or deprivation. And so, it's just helping them to kind of rebuild themselves to break that cycle so it doesn't continue to spiral out of control.
Sure. So you would say that if your parents or grandparents have had the same addiction, that it's likely that the next generation will also pick up that addiction. Is that kind of like the pattern that you end up seeing?
Yeah, and sometimes it can happen with, all the children. Sometimes it can happen with one.
Hmm.
It really just depends on the person and how they're coping with their current circumstances.
Hmm. Yeah,
And some.
I wonder if like culture, you mentioned culture, but you mentioned it as far as like not seeking counsel. I wonder if culture also plays a part in addiction as well. Like I'm Russian, I'm from the Soviet Union, and if anybody knows anything about Russia, no, the Russians love to drink.
Mm.
So I wonder if like, have you noticed anything like that where there's like an ethnic or like a cultural pattern of addiction, anything like that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot more of people that are like very Americanized.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I think, yeah, traditionally, like I'm Italian. And so
Mm-hmm.
like wine is served like with every meal. And like it wasn't uncommon, for children to, have some wine with dinner at a young age. I'm here in East Tennessee. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm working with a lot of people that are in, like rural Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't uncommon, for the children to be trying alcohol at like a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'll ask the clients, how old were you the first time that you tried alcohol? And a lot of them would say, oh, 5 years old with my dad, or,
Yeah.
10 years old outside in the backyard, with my grandfather. And so some of it is cultural, based on like where you live, for
Yeah.
sure.
Excuse me. So, do you think that it's like a never ending battle? Because, so if we're talking about like drugs, the war on drugs, war on drugs, it's obviously no, we're not winning that war. So, do you feel like for every person you help, there's like 10 more that like require help? Do you get that kind of sort of feel from it, or you look at it completely differently?
Um, I mean, I don't really have that type of um, attitude towards it.
Hmm.
I think that what's happening is just as we evolve, like the types of drugs that are used change.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, here we've been seeing a lot of alcohol and then like a lot of opiates.
Yeah.
Depending on the part of the country, I mean, there's more heroin use, or there might be, more marijuana use, or there might be, more, cocaine use, or whatever it is. And
Sure.
so I think really just trying to tap in, like the drugs are always going to be here.
Right.
So, we just kind of have to come to terms with that. And it's, what can we do about it? Once somebody, starts using it and they get to a point where, they become addicted. A lot of people don't think that they're going to become addicted whenever they try drugs. Um, and so, it's just something to do for fun. Sometimes they do it because of peer pressure or because of the environment that they're in. Um, I've even had a lot of people lately that will start taking pain medication because they've had to have some form of surgery,
Hmm.
and then they like the euphoria that they get for it,
Yeah.
or from it, or the energy that they feel from it, or the psychological effects. And so, then I will see people that, have not had any problems their entire life, and then they get introduced to a substance, and then before you know it, they're buying drugs off the street and, spending hundreds of dollars a week on, the habit that they formed.
Yeah. It sounds like it could be a very quick spiral downward from
Mhm.
someone who's like a normal disposition person, in society to just, basically what we would think of as someone who's, a drug addict. It seems like it's a quick fall, it can be at least.
Yeah.
Um, so about the pain medication, it's interesting because I remember watching a documentary on Brett Favre, and he went on, on record on talking about how he had during one game he had his back was hurting, so he had some surgery on his back, and then that escalated to pain abuse, like pain drug abuse, because he would just constantly like need the medication initially. Then it just became something that he would just take on a regular basis. So eventually I believe he had to go into rehab to get, completely off of it. So
Yeah.
it's not even a matter of someone who's, in a like a higher class, I guess you could say, or like a more financially established. I mean, I guess it touches everybody.
Oh, that is for sure. It does not discriminate based on SES. We actually have an impaired professionals program at the place where I work, and so we get pilots, flight attendants,
Hmm.
engineers and conductors from the railroad, coal miners,
Mhm.
people from all sorts of, different walks of life, and doctors, pharmacists,
Yeah,
nurses, um, and those are a lot of the people that are on the ground, working with others, and, just have pretty hectic schedules. And,
mhm.
um, so then once you get down into it, then you can see how, people in those professions can develop those types of addictions.
Sure, sure. What would be the ranges, the age ranges that you generally work with, would you say?
I typically work with 18 and up,
Mhm,
anybody. I mean, I've worked with people all the way up until their 70s.
mhm.
Um, in some of my practicum experience, I have worked with some children as well,
Yeah.
but I typically work with adults.
Okay. Like, I guess my question is, what do you usually see? Like, do you see like more problems with people ages from like in their 20s and their 30s, or is it evenly distributed, you'd say?
It's pretty evenly distributed.
Okay.
So I will
Yeah.
say there's a lot more binge drinking, like in the college age.
Mhm. Oh,
Just
and
because,
and you're in Knoxville
yeah,
at UT.
yeah,
That's
because of the party scene. So there's a lot of binge drinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when I see people to do like their alcohol and drug assessments, like for DUIs, yeah, it's all over the place
Mm,
with
yeah.
ages.
Interesting. Yeah, that's hard work. I mean, that's it's great that that you do that, because it definitely people that we need to do that, because if nobody does it, then it starts this cycle, and then there's nothing that helps it pull it back a little bit. And it's like, if people like you aren't there, we're just going to see generations and generations of people just kind of be crushed, under this type of, especially you're talking about depression. I've never seen a time where depression is so prevalent, in a time where we have almost everything that you could ever want. I mean, the graph of technological advances and in any science and everything you could think of, is going straight up. I mean, we're doing so well in those, excuse me, in those areas, but people are becoming sadder, more depressed. There's people are having like more emotional problems. So yeah, it's a strange dichotomy. But I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just gonna say that is it's kind of like a catch 22, because in one sense the technology helps us to be more connected,
Hmm.
but it's more on a surface level. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. I also think it's because of our fast-paced society. I think that a lot of people don't know how to effectively communicate, and they don't know really how to talk about their thoughts and their feelings in an effective way.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that so many people are stressed out because they're so overloaded,
Yeah,
with everything on their plate. And it's very fast paced. We're not taking a lot of time for self care and
sure.
for wellness.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying that, it made me think. I often hear people of like older generations, and even I say it sometimes now. I'm in my mid 30s, early 30s. So, um, and I'll say it, and other people say it about younger people. But like, oh well, you guys have it so easy. But then when you really think about it, like kids today have it so tough. I mean, they have bullying coming at them in so many different ways. Like, you have the social media. I mean, a lot of people, especially from older generations, never had to deal with anything like that. So the pressure on kids now in school is so much greater. It's just as hard to see for people that are older, because they don't quite understand the
Yeah.
kind of the I guess pressure is the only word I could think of that these kids are under. It's like, would you agree or like disagree with that?
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. Just the pressure that they feel to perform, and
Hmm.
then also the pressure that they feel when they're comparing themselves to others.
Hmm.
I think it's really easy to do.
Have
I
you
also
had? I'm sorry. Go
say,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, have you had like anything, like, I know you have two daughters, that's a lot of responsibility.
Mhm.
Have you had to talk to your daughters about like any of these things? I mean, their ages 8 and 11. I don't, since I'm kind of out of that field of school and all that, I don't know when issues and problems start to kind of creep up on kids nowadays. Have you had to
Yeah.
deal with any of that?
Um, just a little bit with my 11-year-old. She's almost 12. She's in 6th grade.
Hmm.
And I actually don't let either of them have any social media, and
Smart.
they don't have a phone
Mm,
either.
smart.
So they do have tablets. They can't really function without that, especially right now, with the homeschooling.
Yeah.
But I do know that there are some parents that have let their children sign up for, Facebook or Instagram accounts at like younger ages, and that's just not something that I would recommend.
Hmm.
Um, I would also recommend that whenever it does come time for them to have the social media, like once they get into high school, that the parents have full access to those accounts and that they're able to monitor,
Yeah.
what's going on with that.
Yeah.
Because they can, fall prey to, people that are trying to like perpetrate on them or, bully them in some
Mhm.
way. And so that's where, a lot of the issues can come in with like the depression or, some of the high schoolers, thinking about wanting to commit suicide.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's I actually am pretty impressed with that you did that, because a lot of people today, they have this weird sense of feeling that they're somehow restricting their children to their detriment. But a lot of times when they do that, when they allow them to have those things before the kids are fully mature to understand the gravity of it,
Mhm.
it just ends up being such a problem, because
Yeah.
your social media is a connection to another individual or multitudes of individuals. Those people, you don't know who they are, what their intentions are, what kind of problems they're going to are going to cause for your children. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think how is it Bill Cosby used to say, the proof is in the pudding. I don't know if he's a good example right now to refer to, but it's like people that choose your route, all their children always end up being a little bit at an advantage. So yeah, definitely. I give you accommodation for that, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I mean, I'm a firm believer like in proactive parenting.
mhm,
And so
yeah.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, yeah, you have to steer them the right way. So off to like to a different subject a little bit. So with your bodybuilding career, so how did you get into that? I mean, I know you said you take care of yourself. Self-care is really important, but is that something that your parents were always into? When did you decide, okay, well, I want
No.
to do that?
So actually it's really funny because my parents like they don't understand it. Like they're old school Italian,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Nina, you need to eat, you're so skinny. Um, or put your ass away. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on here, but
It's fine. It's fine.
so I always have been a competitive person. I'm the
Hmm.
firstborn, I'm type A. Um, and so I do feel like I get that drive from my father.
Hmm.
He's the firstborn. He's an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and
Okay.
my mom is also a hard worker. She's um, I'm just so lucky and blessed. She's the sweetest woman ever. She would do anything for anybody. They're an amazing example for me. They've been married 45 years,
Wow.
which is something that's not as common nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, so they actually enrolled me in sports, when I was younger. And so I always did, like dance and gymnastics and
Hmm.
cheerleading. And I was a competitive cheerleader, and we had like a co-ed team, and I was on an all-star team as well. And so when I got to college, I got into working out because I wasn't doing the sports as
Hmm.
much anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was actually working out at the Powerhouse Gym here in Knoxville when I was in my undergraduate program. And the woman at the time that ran the bodybuilding show, she came up to me and she asked me if I would hand out the trophies at the
Okay.
show. And so I went to my first show in 2001 and I saw the figure girls
Hmm.
because back then, the bikini didn't exist yet.
Right. Right.
And so I was on stage and I was watching them and I was like, I want to do this. And so I did my first show a month later.
Oh, that's
And
pretty quick.
that was the Tennessee State show. You know, I didn't do much of a prep. I just prepped for about 4 weeks, and I actually took second place in
Wow.
the figure tall division. And then, you know, I was in school and just didn't take it very seriously. And then, you know, they started the whole process where they were qualifying us for nationals and, you know,
Hmm.
turning us pro. And so I actually had qualified for nationals a couple times, and I qualified again in 2004. And then I took 2005 off to grow
Hmm.
my shoulders and just so that my upper body would match my lower body, because I was always more like quad dominant.
Hmm.
And so, and then in 2006, I did my first national show. I did Junior USA's, and I got seventh place, like right out the gate. And then so I just went for it that year in 2006, and I did Junior Nationals in Chicago, and I got second. And then I went right to Team Universe 3 weeks later in New York, and I got first out of like 40 girls. I won figure class D.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, but you're a bikini pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you make that transition, and why did you make that trend from figure to bikini?
Yeah. Well, I did a couple pro figure shows, like one in 2007, and I ended up getting pregnant. And then I came back on stage in 2010 for one show in between my daughters. And I noticed, you know, that it was changing, you know,
Hmm.
that the figure girls were getting bigger, and bikini had just come out in like 2009. And so when I did that show in 2010, I should have already made the switch to
Hmm.
bikini. A lot of the girls that, you know, turned pro around the same time as I did, you know, had made the switch to bikini.
Yeah.
Um, and my physique is just better suited for that division. I took a lot of time off. I actually was in a marriage before that where my ex-husband wasn't supportive of me competing.
Hmm.
And then just because of, you know, working so much and the girls, I took 7 years off.
Wow.
And so I didn't come back on stage then until October of 2017. That's when I did my first bikini show.
Wow. Okay. So
So
it's 2017. That's, I mean, that's, so when did you actually turn pro? I mean, you might have said it, but I missed it. When,
2006
so you turned pro 2006 figure,
figure.
in
Hmm.
figure. And then you,
Yeah,
in 2017, you did your first pro
bikini.
bikini show. So how was
Yeah.
that experience?
Um, I mean, it's been interesting, you know, just switching divisions just because I've had to learn the bikini posing.
Hmm.
You know, but I I love it. You know,
Okay.
I'm just so happy to be back and, you know, doing what I love. And I've made tremendous improvements in my physique over the last 2 years. And so I'm going to go for it. You know,
Sure.
hopefully whenever the shows come back on, you know, I'm going to try to qualify for the Olympia.
Yeah.
Um, I kept moving up in the placings. And of course, like as the shows went on last year, the numbers in the shows kept getting greater.
Hmm.
And so in San Antonio in October, I got 11th out of 42 in the open. And then I got 13th out of 48 girls in the
Wow.
open. That was actually a record. That was the biggest bikini show in history
Wow.
for the IFBB.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing.
yeah. And I'm working with Kim Otto, you know, Body by O.
Hmm.
And so he thinks that I've made enough improvements for this year now to be in first call out. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was before we got, onto the podcast, I was kind of doing a little bit of research and stuff, and I was looking through your pictures. As I'm kind of scrolling through them now. Yeah, I mean, you look incredible. I think you definitely can be in first call out for sure. What do you think about the fact, or do you see the divisions getting harder and bigger, even bikini? Do you see that from like your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of bikini girls.
Yeah, probably more bikini girls than any
Yeah,
other division, I'm sure.
yeah. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard when there's, you know, 40 girls deep, or you know, almost
Yeah.
50 girls deep at a show. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely tough.
Well, I apologize. Misspoke, or you misunderstood me. I meant, um, have you noticed the physiques getting bigger and harder, like in each
Oh yes,
division?
yeah,
So
yeah,
you have noticed that?
yeah, and that's part of the reason why I didn't go back to figure,
Hmm.
because I didn't want to have to like put on more muscle to
Hmm.
compete back in that division. And I just don't like that bigger, harder look.
Hmm.
But I mean, even in bikini, like I think back to, when I was competing in figure, back in 2007, 2010. And I mean, I'm leaner now for bikini than I was back then for figure.
That.
So my last show that was in November of 2019, I got down to 7% body fat. And
Hmm.
I mean, they told me my conditioning was on point, like it was perfect. So
Right.
I mean, I had never, that's the leanest I've ever been.
So that I was actually gonna tell you, I had a podcast with a figure competitor yesterday, and we were talking about that, and I was telling her how sometimes, and even like for you, like your look now will be like a figure look back then. Like sometimes I'll look at bikini girls and I'll be like, oh, that's a figure competitor, right? And then
Yeah,
I'll see, oh no, they're in bikini. So of course now I'm used to it because the divisions have been that way now for a little bit.
yeah,
But yeah, it's interesting how everyone has gotten just more muscular. Like you look at and this has been brought up in several podcasts, but Ashley Kaltwasser, who's was, I think she's the most winningest bikini Olympian, if I'm not mistaken. She won 3 or something like that. So back in the day, and then now she's back, and I don't think she's even cracking top 5 at the Olympia. I don't know if she made top 5. So it's a huge drop for her, but she hasn't really changed. Her physique is about the same. It's just the divisions have evolved.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
When I grew pro and figure, I weighed 122. I actually weigh 130 right now. So, and on stage, I'll probably weigh about 125. So
Yeah.
I'm competing in bikini now, and I'm actually probably going to be like 3 pounds heavier
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
stage than I was back then for figure.
For sure. That's it's interesting how things have changed. Now, let me ask you this. In your opinion, do you think it's for the better or for the worse? And not just, don't just take in the bikini divisions, but all of them, like even women's bodybuilding. Like, do you think it's a benefit to have women's bodybuilding, or you think they did the right thing by eliminating it in the past?
It's tough.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I think that I don't know necessarily that I agree with that division being eliminated. I don't like how all of the divisions progressively have gotten bigger.
Hmm.
Um, I actually like it a little bit softer. I think it takes away, from like the femininity with women.
Sure,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
um, and that's part of the reason why I'm in the bikini division, because this is the division where we're the smallest, where we have
Right.
the least amount of muscle.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so, and I also think that that's why there are so many of us and so many girls want to compete in the bikini division.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it takes a switch of your mind to go to a higher level division. So like you definitely have to like start thinking differently when you go from bikini to figure, from figure to physique, because at that point you're putting on so much more, more muscle, some whatever you need to do to get that muscle on there. It's definitely, you have to kind of be full in. You can't be halfway in into the,
right, right.
into that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. So at this point, like how do you train? Because I mean, we're all in quarantine, right? Your gyms aren't open over there. So like, how are you training?
Well, actually, our gym's just open this week.
Oh, well, my bad. My
Um,
bad.
we just came off quarantine this week, but
Okay.
for 6 weeks we were, I had no gym. So
Hmm.
I've been training at home. Luckily, I had, some dumbbells and a barbell here and a bench and a ton of bands. And so, I
Hmm.
made do with what I have, with what I had at home, for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I actually went and got, a body scan done last week, right before I started working out at the gym again. And so my
Uh-huh.
body fat had gone up a little bit. Like I'm at about 13% body fat right now.
Hmm.
And my muscle mass, had come down a little bit. Like I lost about 1.5 pounds, but I think a lot of that is just like, glycogen levels. And just once I get back into the gym for a couple weeks, like I'll build that back up and be okay.
Sure.
Um, I'm the type of person that if I don't eat enough or if I'm not, lifting heavy consistently, like I'll lose muscle,
Yeah.
because I'm not even doing cardio right now.
Hmm.
So I have to make sure, that I'm eating my calories. to
Mhm.
maintain the muscle that I've put on over the last couple of years. Because I mean, I literally had no glutes. I had to build my butt. So I've worked really hard to get this butt that I have right now, and so I definitely don't want to lose it.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. It's if it's that tough for you to put on a body part, it's like something like not going to the gym for that amount of time is a killer. Because I mean,
Yeah.
it's and every one of us have that. Like we have genetic pros and genetic cons, right? So yeah, that's tough. Do you usually? So you say you lose muscle quickly. Do you use fat quickly as well, or how does that work for you?
I mean, I've been doing this for so long, just eating clean and, eating 5 or 6
Hmm.
meals a day that it's more of like a lifestyle for me. I don't really even think about it. And so I think
Hmm.
that my body is accustomed to that. And I
Gotcha.
think because I carry more muscle, I think that my metabolism is faster.
Hmm.
Um, but there again, like, I mean, I'll allow myself to eat Chick-fil-A with the girls or get pizza or have
Right.
chips or candy, but I'm not doing that every day.
Sure, sure. No, that
And
makes
so,
sense.
um, so yeah, but once I start my fasted cardio, yeah, like I can shed, the body fat pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. That's a benefit. That's a benefit. I'm kind of like the opposite of like I gain a lot of muscle very quickly, but it's hard for me to lose body fat. And sometimes I'll say that, but then I also cheat a little more than I need to too. So that kind of plays into it. So do you have an off season or not really? You just kind of keep the same kind of thing going throughout the 12 months.
Well, actually, I had an off season from November up until I started getting ready for the show that I was supposed to compete in April. I
Hmm.
was supposed to do the Clash championship series. And that was canceled. It was actually canceled when I was like 2.5 weeks out.
Great. Yeah.
Um, so I had trained for about 10 weeks, but um, because I stay pretty lean all the time, I didn't have to incorporate cardio until about the last, month and a half
Hmm.
prior to that. So I had about, 4 or 5 months where like I wasn't doing any cardio and I was like taking in more calories.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of an off season, but
Yeah.
I don't really consider it an off season because like I'm still staying like on a plan,
Right.
and
Right.
still like training consistently. Um, Now I did take about, like a week off from the
Mhm.
gym, after my last show, just to give my body a rest.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm the type of person that like I just love being in the gym. I love
Sure.
working out. And so, that's kind of like my therapy.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I completely understand. I'm in the same boat with you. It's so like I don't now that you said your gyms have opened, I'm wondering if ours have opened too. I better check on that. But it's going to be so just like the feeling is going to be so different now going to the gym because like I haven't been there for so long. It's like I used to go to daily every single day, and now I'm like, obviously outside of my rest days, but and now it's like having not been there for so long, it's going to be weird walking in. It's going to be
yeah,
eerie.
yeah.
So
Yeah, well, everybody's having to wear a mask right now.
yeah.
Um, no, and I mean that brings up a good point too, because it takes a while for us to like establish, thought patterns and behavior patterns like on track with like a goal that we
Hmm.
have in mind. And so everybody has just been so out of whack and just, has broken their routine, over the last like 6 weeks. And so yeah, it's going to take a minute for everybody to kind of get reacclimated and to try to get back on track.
Sure, sure.
Um, I'm actually expecting there to be like an influx of people, that need treatment or that need, mental health services after this, just because I think that a lot of people have been really struggling during this time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right because it wasn't that tough for me, but I will say I'm not going to deny it. I was just talking to my wife recently about it, about how like some days is just kind of like blah, you're just kind of
mhm,
like, I wouldn't necessarily call it depressed because I don't want to downplay people with have that serious depression, but there's definitely like like a downing type of mood, when
Mhm.
you're in quarantine. So for sure,
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be different. Yeah. So at this point, like, we don't know what's gonna happen with any shows, right now. Do you have like a plan like ahead, what you're gonna try to do? Like maybe is what you have your sights on?
Um, as long as the Chicago Pro stays on, that show is set for July 4th. That's gonna be my first show back.
Okay. July
So,
4th.
yeah, and then following that is gonna be Northern California, which is July 11th, and that actually had been rescheduled from a prior date.
Mm-hmm. July's
So,
close though. July's
yeah.
close. We'll
Yeah,
see.
so I don't know, they might still decide to, postpone them again. We never know, so
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully not. Hopefully you'll get the show that you want. You get
mhm.
your first call out. You'll get your win, and then hopefully they'll have the Olympia, and you'll get to go there. So
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah, they
wishing you
actually
well.
said that they're gonna be making an announcement about that on Monday.
About what, the Olympia?
There's some sort of announcement coming on Monday. So, I'm not sure.
Supposedly, from what I've been hearing, it's postponed.
Okay.
They're saying probably December. Of course, that's just hearsay. I guess Monday, like you said, we're gonna get more of a concrete answer. But from
Mhm.
everything that I'm hearing, it's probably gonna be December, which isn't terrible, but it's gonna be cold. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't even know, are they gonna even have it in Las Vegas? That's the other question. Like, where are they gonna have it? So
Yeah.
it's a big there's a lot up in the air, because then
Right.
you're also dealing with sponsors and like who, it's a nightmare, so
Yeah.
but I mean, I hope that they get it together for sure, for people
Mhm.
like you and just us fans too in general. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, hey, if somebody, we're gonna wrap up. I think I've taken up enough of your time,
Yeah.
but so somebody wants to contact you, like either for like obviously, you work with mental health, so maybe something with that, or whether it's might be fitness related, the diet, nutrition, training, anything like that. What's the best way to reach you? Go ahead and put your plugs in.
They can reach me on Instagram, just at Nina DiTommaso Fitness.
Hmm.
Or they can email me, just at
Okay.
ninaditommaso@gmail.com.
Okay, awesome. And whoever will watch this will have your name, because I'll have that on there, and I'll tag everything needed,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
they'll be able to reach you.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I've
You
enjoyed
take-
talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Bye-bye.